Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and if you are new here, welcome to the channel. This is gonna be probably an interesting video to stumble on if this is your first time here, so definitely feel free to go check out some previous videos. But if you've been around for a little while, you probably have some gist of what has been going on in our lives. But just in case you don't, I'm gonna kind of fill you in on what's been going on the last few years. And then we're gonna kind of get into the topic of this video, which is what I'm sure you are here for based on the title alone. So let me backtrack, because this is the only way that this can make sense, and address the question first by starting off by saying that Jonas and I, when we first got married, had always discussed having like 3 to 4 kids. Mostly where we mentally were at was about 4 kids. So if you followed us, again, we have moved from Texas to Colorado and then back to Texas when we had our daughter Tatum, and then back to Colorado, which is where we have been ever since 2019. So we've been back in Colorado since 2020. So we have spent most of our children's lives in Colorado, and for the sake of having children, that time was all spent in Texas. So around the time that we were living back in Texas, with having just had Tatum, right before we moved back to Colorado, we had made the executive decision, just kind of abruptly, to be done having kids. The conversation that we were having at the time was that I remember there was a day I was sitting on my son's floor and I was on the phone with Jonas and he was at work, and I had asked him, the question went something along the lines of, should we just go ahead and have our next child so that within the next year we can basically move to Colorado, or move back to Colorado, because we knew that that was what was on our hearts and what we wanted to do. And within probably that same 48 hours, we came to the conversation of, or we could just be done having children. And it wasn't an emotional decision by any means. It was just very logistical, as you know, in 2020.
Financial decision.
It was financial as well as logistical. When we had just had Tatum, it was 2020. So as you know, that was the primary year of COVID. So around that time, it was not the most conducive time to even be thinking about having more children, just because it was crazy in general, going through the pregnancy during that time and then giving birth in the midst of a pandemic. So fast forward till about 2021 in January, I was diagnosed with PCOS. This was about 7 months after giving birth to Tatum. I knew something was going on because I was not getting periods the way that I was supposed to be, and I knew something was off. I was breastfeeding at the time, and so there was that kind of option on the table for being why I was not having correct periods. But either way, I ended up at the doctor and was diagnosed with PCOS within that same time frame. At that point, because of the severity of where the PCOS was at, we started medication, and that has just kind of been my situation since then. With Tucker's pregnancy, which is my older son, if you're new here, he is 5, and so it's been about 6 years since I was pregnant with him. And following his pregnancy, I was diagnosed with thyroid problems. So between both pregnancies, I had been diagnosed with medical problems, and that definitely aided to the decision of deciding to be done with having children, just simply because I wasn't sure what more my body could realistically take. And it just made the most sense to just be done. Again, this was not an emotionally driven decision. This was just a logistical decision. So I want to say in about March of 2021, Jonas scheduled a vasectomy, and I was not like 100% on board. It was kind of one of those things where he woke up that day and was not really. So he had pretty much just woken up one day, and it was kind of matter of fact, like I scheduled my vasectomy, and it was kind of, at that point in time, my mental health wasn't the best with both of my pregnancies. I struggled through postpartum depression. So between all of the things going on for me, I just didn't feel the need to really question it or stop it. It kind of just felt like the natural course of action, even though it wasn't what my heart was telling me was the right thing to do. It was just, again, it was logistical. So when he went and did that, it just kind of was what it was, and we moved on with our lives. And really within like that next year, it really started hitting me, you know, as Tatum turned about 1 year old, it became very evident to me that baby fever was not done for, and that I was not gonna just be so easily moving on with my life as I kind of envisioned when we had made the decision. And so the biggest thing for me was having baby fever and acknowledging the fact that we were done having kids, because obviously Jonas had had a vasectomy. And so that was just something I kind of had to come to terms with. But also there was always that lingering thought in the back of my mind of, well, vasectomies are reversible. And so that was kind of an option that was on the table mentally for me, but not really. Again, logistically, because our financial situation didn't so much align with a vasectomy reversal, having more children, or really anything that came with that. So we were at that point, and from 2.5 years ago until now, I have consistently had baby fever, pretty constant every single month for 2.5 years.
I can confirm that.
So then over the last probably 8 months now, it became from just like regular baby fever, like it kind of transitioned into a hardcore like desire to have another child, but not feeling like it was realistic. So much so that I got to the point about a month ago where I was, no, it's been a little bit more now, probably about 8 weeks ago, I was in Texas for a work trip, and I was on the phone with Jonas crying because I was battling this idea in my head of having a third child. Obviously it coming with a little bit more preparation work than any other child, because there would be a vasectomy reversal in the question. And so I think like if the vasectomy wasn't in the question probably a year or 2 years ago, we probably would have had another child. There wouldn't even be a really conversation. It probably just would have came to the point of it happening. But because obviously the vasectomy was in the equation, that just didn't happen. So because of that element being involved, there definitely, for me anyways, put a lot more weight on making that decision. And then also society was really pushing me in this area of feeling like I was asking for too much by already having 2 healthy children, being happy with the dynamic that we have with those children, and just being afraid of that dynamic changing and just everything that could come with kind of re-entering that phase of our lives. But I think that the biggest place we found ourselves at mentally, and for me especially, was the fact that it feels like life has kind of been just like a freight train. Like it feels like it has been going so fast for so long. Pretty much from the moment we got married until now, it's just been fast motion. And I feel like every stage has come and gone like the blink of an eye. And it has been so easy for all of those stages to pass us by. And at the time of it happening, I will say, I'm definitely one of those very eager people that's always looking forward to the next thing. And so naturally, I didn't see it as a problem. I was just optimistically looking towards kind of the next chapter of life, so to speak. And there was always the conversation for me mentally of like, well, when my kids are a little older, I can do this. And when my kids can walk, I can do this. And when my kids can do this, I can do this. And so I just constantly found myself steps ahead of where we were actually at, just constantly looking towards the next thing. And this year that really hit me hard, because I had somewhat of like, I don't want to say a midlife crisis, because obviously I'm in my 20s, but definitely it hit me like I felt like I was almost passing through my life faster than what was necessary, especially through those like different seasons of life, whether it be like childbearing, having a career, just having these different parts of life. There's definitely things that I feel like I've put on the back burner because of what society has told me. And I haven't prioritized the things that were truly in my heart all along, which was being a mom, having children, experiencing that, and getting the opportunity to just be a really involved, over-the-top mom, which definitely, as COVID happened and everything else kind of was robbed from me in a way. So that being said, we hit the point of thinking it comes down to two kind of questions, and that is, we can either be happy knowing we experienced that point in life and continue to move on with our life, knowing that that chapter, as our children are both turning 4 and 5, is
6.
I'm saying kind of like over the last year though, like that those two ages, they say, you know, after the age of 4 you don't have a little kid anymore. And so that has been witnessing that over the last year with Tucker before he turned 5, and then now watching Tatum as she's about to be 4. It's really put us in that window of feeling like we no longer have little babies anymore. And so obviously having a newborn, having a little baby can be super hard. So it's easy to just be like, well, that's behind me and now we're moving on, and it's some things are easier, some things are harder. But the other option that was obviously on the table was we could re-embrace that part of our lives. We still have this window of opportunity. I am still in my 20s. I have like a year and a half left. And
holding on to that year and a half.
And so it allows me like the opportunity to basically take a step back, pause on life, and think about what's important. Like I said, we went through a lot of emotions with this. Like I said, I cried a lot. I really found myself looking for resources like this, like YouTube videos, looking for women on TikTok, looking on mom forums, like asking what it's like having 3 children. Is it really that bad having 3 children? Things like that. Because again, society has really
in real life, we were asking people mainly.
Yeah, like we would be at a restaurant and I would ask people, when I saw that parents had 3 children or more, I would ask them like, should we, you know, like, do you recommend going for the 3rd or for the 4th? And the first time I actually approached somebody in public and asked this question, they immediately, in front of their 3rd child, said, no, don't do it. And like they were acting like horrified. And so definitely that day in particular, I was like, oh, okay, we're just overthinking this. Like, we'll take a step back. Like this, you know, maybe it's not a good idea. And so, and because that was earlier, that was like April.
Yeah, that was a while ago.
It was a while ago, of 2023. And now we are in March of 2024. So it's actually been almost a full year, which is insane. And ever since then, I've asked a lot of different parents. I am one of 4 children. I grew up with 3 siblings. He is one of 4 as well. He didn't grow up with them.
No, 5.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I was like, that's a problem, but that's a whole other story for another time. But that being said, like I said, our decision, I think, came with a little bit more thinking with having the vasectomy reversal involved, that being a really big one. And also just asking ourselves, like, because it's kind of one of those things, like, once we do pull the plug, we do the vasectomy reversal, it starts feeling real for us. Whereas for other people, it's like, you have the, I'm either trying or I'm not trying. Like for us, really beginning that and like making this all feel real and starting this process started with the decision to have the vasectomy reversal. So in that way, it feels like we're kind of already in it, because now at this point, March of 2024, Jonas has now had his vasectomy reversal. I want to touch on one super fast thing regarding the vasectomy reversal before kind of going more into that, which is the biggest thing that probably scares most people who find themselves kind of in this situation of vasectomy remorse or regret or whatever. The conversation, I think, for a lot of people comes back to money. And I heard somebody say this, and I hope that this helps somebody else, but I heard somebody talk about how growing up, they were like, I never wished that I had more money. Like I never would have replaced one of my siblings with money. And so, and I'm, like I said, I'm one of 4, and I feel the same way. Like I never thought about it that way. I would never ever have replaced one of my siblings for more money growing up or anything like that. So that definitely gave me some like grounding perspective, but the money that's involved can obviously be really intimidating in today's society. And so I'm not completely naive to that. I don't think a decision to have a baby, and I've always felt this way from the time that we were struggling in our earlier days in our marriage to even now, I don't think there's ever an appropriate time, financially speaking, to actually have a baby. I don't think that's actually a thing. If you find yourself in this situation, the obvious one that you can't really get around is if you have the finances to afford the vasectomy reversal. And so obviously with a lot of vasectomy reversals, they are pretty hefty in price. I know that the national average, I want to say, is somewhere around $12,000, which is crazy. We did something very random, which which I do recommend. It worked though. I do recommend, and that is that Jonas actually flew to Utah. There's a surgeon there who does them for extremely cheap. There's two options that this surgeon offers. One is just the regular vasectomy, and one, I'm going to butcher the name hardcore, but it's like epidemiosomotomy something. Okay,
pretty close though.
Something like that. One being more of the baseline vasectomy reversal, and one is more extensive. So if you have been longer since your vasectomy, or you have some random complication, sometimes that's required.
So between the two procedures, I actually did the first one just because we wanted to save a little bit of money, and it had only been 3 years since I got my vasectomy.
The biggest thing was basically you're paying for what surgeon you have, and not all surgeons for these procedures are experienced to do the more invasive procedure, and so that's where the dollar amount comes in, and they don't know that before the procedure. And so basically if it's been a long time since the procedure, or whatever the case may be, or if fertility is the top priority and you want just a guaranteed that you're gonna get there, then you pay it's like $3,000, and which is still a steal, absolutely a steal. But it's about $3,000. You go in and you have that done. The other option being the simpler surgery, the one that takes less time and less experience of a surgeon, is what we decided to do. We kind of were just risking it. We're leaving that favor up to God in a way. Like, if it's meant to be, this will work. If it's not meant to be, it won't work. And that procedure was $1,900, an absolute steal. It really justified the cost to get to Utah and everything. We live in Colorado, so it's not that crazy of a trip. But that is what we did. That being said,
also with my age and it being so soon since I did the vasectomy, they actually have a calculator where it'll calculate like how successful your chances are going to be, and I was around 80 to 90% successfulness, so I was okay with those chances. I
wanted to kind of go into some of the preconceived notions regarding having a third child, and also why it was such a hard decision for me. In my heart, emotionally, my heart is very tied to the idea of going through pregnancy again and having another child, knowing that I struggled through the pregnancies that I've had, knowing that I've had the medical stuff happen. I know everything that is unpredictable that can come, and I know everything that is expected and comes with having a child. Now that we've had a bit of a gap, there was definitely a lot more weight on that decision. Because again, we could just move on with our lives and be happy with the 2 healthy children we have, and we would probably have a super happy life and everything would be fine and good. But I think a huge part of me would always wonder, what if? In terms of like what we have, I think I definitely feel like I could take on more. I think that I feel like I would love another child. I have the capacity to love another child and all of that. Some of the biggest things that I wanted to talk about are the different things, the different lines that I've heard from people about 3 children in my search. The first and probably most popular thing that I heard, and it's so silly to me, but they talk about how you're outnumbered. That's like the most cliche first thing that comes to people's minds. Even the parents that have the 3 children or more, they talk about being outnumbered. And while I totally understand that, me as a very visual thinker, I always think about when they talk about, they're like, there's 1 kid for each hand, and they're talking about like each parent. But I'm like, wait a second, like, I have 2 hands, he has 2 hands. I can hold each of my kids' hands as it is, so I can hold both of my kids' hands. We could essentially have 4 kids. We have enough hands for them all, right? Like, essentially, we have the 4 hands. So that is one thing. I think that that is such a silly thing to say. They say that 1 kid is 1 kid, 2 kids is 2 kids, and 3 kids is like 10 kids. So everyone always says this, like, for some reason they say that the transition from 2 to 3 is significantly harder than the transition from 1 to 2 or even 0 to 1. And I completely disagree with that. I think for sure the biggest transition for me was 0 to 1. I'm like, going from not having a single responsibility with another person's life to that being your entire world, definitely a huge transition. Now that we have the 2 kids, our life is chaotic either way. Like, I could show you this camera around my house. It's a mess. So it's chaos either way.
Mostly the kids' room.
So going back to like the money one, that was definitely one that gets brought up a lot. I've kind of already touched on that, but for me, I don't think that that's a huge deciding factor. I definitely think it feels nice. Like, you can always have more money in today's world, like, to sustain yourself, provide yourself, not feel like you're paycheck to paycheck. But I will say, thinking back on our life as married adults, some of my fondest memories are thinking back on the times when we were paycheck to paycheck. So I don't think that that at all is tied to a big decision making or even how you remember and look back on life. I know some people have really negative experiences from going through like extreme poverty or things like that, but I don't think that it like makes or breaks you. In some ways, I think that going through that makes you a stronger person. The other big thing is sharing your love between the children. And people talk about how it's like selfish to basically divide yourself more. My 2 children both are dying for a baby sibling. They both love babies. They think they're the cutest things. Everywhere we go, Tatum is wanting to play caretaker mommy. She wants to baby Tucker.
The other thing is too, is now the kids have another friend, lifelong friend that they're gonna have for the rest of their life. So honestly, in my opinion, it's multiplying the love.
Yeah.
And it's funny because back in the day, people would have more kids, so those kids could help them around the house, help them around the farm, and help them get stuff done to bring more income into the family. So it just really depends how you want to look at it. I think multiplying your family and making more essentially is going to be better for us specifically. So that's really how I feel about it.
I think too, I've heard kind of the morbid side of this, which is, it's tragic and I don't think anyone wants to think this way, but it's life and we kind of have to think this way in some elements. Obviously, as parents going into parenthood, you know that you're hopefully not going to outlive your child. You know that your children are going to live life beyond you and that they'll be on their own at some point. Even just, you know, going into adulthood and being on their own, separate from you in your home. And so I think about those things and the future, and I think that obviously knowing that your child is going to lose you, that's a huge part of their life, is you as their parent. And so the more siblings that they have around them throughout the remainder of life, I think it definitely makes a huge difference for them.
Yep.
And also with that, the element of the not leaving an only child, with having 2 children, if God forbid something were to happen to one of the actual children, whether it be, you know, in young age or even later in life, you're essentially then leaving one child as a only child. Yeah. Because they have no one else in this world. And I think that the biggest thing that I have learned for me is that throughout, like, and I know for you too, but throughout life, most every friend I have ever had has come and gone. And it's not for like bad reasons necessarily, but just that's kind of just how life goes. Moving across the country is definitely part of that. Having, you know, different people go in different directions when you go into high school. Coming from Texas, like being in a really populated area, you have that divide when you go into high school, and then when you go into college, and then just from those, like,
and when you get married and when you have kids, and then you're just completely living different lives from the old friends you had.
It just keeps like branching out to the point where it's like really like all you really do have left is truly the people with the best interests in mind, and the people that you have left are your family. And even us in Colorado, like all we have is each other. So most days are spent just the four of us, whatever it is that we're doing, whether we're at home, whether we're out and about. It's the four of us. Like we're
99%
package deal. Like we're there together. And so yeah, that definitely being a big thing. The other big and last thing I'm going to touch on in terms of why I genuinely know in my heart it is what I want, is that the question gets asked a lot of like, do you just want a baby again, or do you genuinely want to raise another child? And it's crazy that that's the question that presents itself, because it makes me think that a lot of people have such bad experiences or such good experiences with the newborn phase, and that's such a huge chunk of this for people mentally thinking about it.
Like their whole reasoning behind wanting another baby.
Right. I've never thought, like during this entire time of having baby fever, it has never been because I just want a baby. In fact, when we talk about it, we know for me the hardest period of time with having children has been the most difficult for me. Figuring out where I'm at medically, figuring out my mental health, figuring out breastfeeding in the midst of medical stuff, trying to make it work. All of those things are so much harder for me. So I would say honestly,
baby belly, like, just about everything.
Honestly, all of that stuff by far is like the scarier part to me. Like this, and then the selfish sides of me is like, I have lost all the baby weight. I'm at a good point with my health right now. I am at a good place right now with the businesses that I'm running, and I am making really good money right now. So it'd be easy to be like, well, I'm healthy right now, I'm making good money right now, just move on with my life. But I still find myself in the position of wanting another child. And I say child because I genuinely, what I want more than anything, and I think even now experiencing it, is getting to watch my kids grow. That's been the most exciting thing for me.
So fun.
And when I think about what I want out of the future, I think that the thing I come back to is this vision of what I want around the dinner table. And I highly encourage, if you're finding yourself in this position of thinking, try to picture your life in 10, 15, 20 years and ask yourself, what do you see in 10 years? What do you see in 15 years? What do you see in 20 years? Do you see it being kind of quiet, calm? You have a couple kids, you're settled, your life is pretty quiet? Or are you like me, where you kind of thrive in the chaos, you thrive in having a lot of people around, and that's kind of where you see yourself at? Obviously, the fewer children you have, the fewer people naturally that are gonna be around as you progress through life. Fewer friends around, fewer family friends that you make
kids,
through
less
that.
Grandkids,
Less grandkids being another big one. Just less overall that you have responsibility wise for sure, but also less joy and fulfillment and just different things you get to experience in life. I think there's so much joy and privilege, and actually the amount that children slow your life down, and you just have to stop and re-embrace different things that maybe you haven't embraced since you were a child. I think that that's really, really nice. But when I think about my dinner table 10, 15, 20 years from now, I more than anything want it to be surrounded by people. I want to see my kids married and them all having their own kids. I want to see lots of grandkids. Like, that's where I'm trying to get to. And right now, with only having the 2 kids, that's another big point, is like, what if one of my kids didn't want to have children? Now I have only 1 child maybe, or even neither of them, that want to have kids, and then I don't have grandkids. Like, that's part of what I want out of life too. So I think this decision comes with a lot of weight. There's a reason why so many people get caught up on it. But for us, we have officially for sure made up our decision, and it has come with a lot of thinking, as I'm sure you can tell with this video. There's been so many different elements that we've thought about and considered, and we've even had people around us be a little bit more negative about that decision at different times, just not everyone feels the same positivity towards what a blessing having a baby is and being able to have a baby. So where we're at now with our decision is we've gotten the vasectomy reversed. Our plan is in the next few months to start trying for another baby. Ultimately, the decision, it'll just be left up to what is meant to happen. I don't know, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But I don't think that that's gonna happen. I feel pretty optimistic. I feel pretty good about the fact that it's gonna happen. So I'm really excited to be sharing that with you guys. I wanna answer as many questions as I can. I feel like I could talk about the vasectomy reversal all day long. There's so many different sides to this that we could talk about. Jonas actually filmed most of his surgery, so there's a whole slew of things we could address there if you have just like actual literal questions about the procedure of a vasectomy reversal. So anyways, we are super excited to share this all with you guys. If you want to follow along with our journey as we begin trying to conceive, definitely make sure you are subscribed if you're not already. And if you want to be notified when we upload our videos, make sure you hit the bell whenever you subscribe. That's going to notify you whenever we upload. We have definitely had a pretty big hiatus from YouTube. Just life has been really crazy. Like I said, so much has changed for us. Life has just been an absolute whirlwind over the last few years. But
we're on TikTok and we're on there daily.
Yeah, and again, kind of bringing back to the fact, like with children slowing life down, that's where we're at with what we want out of life right now. And so definitely re-shifting our priorities a little bit, and YouTube is definitely one of those priorities. Our kids really, really, really love filming for YouTube, and Tucker is so proud to tell any and everyone that he meets that he's part of the Tucker Lock fam. So our kids really, really love it, and like I said, they're super, super excited
and they love to rewatch the videos. It's like
one of their favorite things. So they're excited to, like I said, they've been pleading and begging for a baby sibling. So yeah, we're all super excited. So excited to share it with you guys. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. We hope you guys enjoyed the video, and we will see you guys in the next one. Bye guys.